So it looks like the whole world is singing and dancing on AI tune, and it's looking more like that any company that is not adopting AI may be left behind helpless. So in this video, I'll walk through some use cases which will show you how Palantir is creating a new data world driven by AI. And towards the end, I'm going to share some exciting news on Palantir and AI. And we are starting right now. So regardless of which industry you belong to, one thing that is common across all industries that they all generate data and lots of data. But I bet you did not know this fact. Take a look at this. 50% of the data gets wasted, or in other words, companies only use 50% of the data that they generate. I'm going to share my screen and show you my research on how Palantir is helping companies make sense of their lost data, aka implementing AI. So let's start from the beginning. The term AI got popular in early 2000. And since then, it was popular in those 50, this is from Google Trends, by the way, it's in 50s range all the way to about 2015. And that's where the breakthrough happens and people started to talk about AI more and more. And as you can see, the interest has risen and never looked back ever since 2015. Now, take a look at the stat. The stat shows that I mentioned before as well, only 50% of the data gets used by the companies. And as the company size increases, the usable data gets less. More so over here, in this they are saying, on average, respondents believe 50% of their organization's available data is used for decision making, which is really a huge problem for companies because the bigger they get, the lesser the number of data or the percentage of data that they can use. So this is where Palantir comes in. And one of the biggest advantages of Palantir is the capability of connecting datasets across multiple platforms. So from their most recent deck, you can see that they tout that they can connect and operate swiftly across space, air, sea, and land. You probably have seen this presentation before. That's all great, but from the very first glance when you're looking at this presentation, it's government written all over this. But let's take a look at it carefully. So how many industries uses sea, air, and land? Lots of them. Think of logistic companies. For example, let's look at some consumer companies like UPS, FedEx, DHL. Just like them, there are many other that uses different ways to run their business. But just don't take my word for it. Take a look directly from the DHL website, this article that was published back in 2018. It's not new. The title says, Building the Self-Driving Supply Chain or AI-Driven Supply Chain. Now, the article mentions Palantir specifically right here that, or DHL or the company is actually partnering with specialist AI companies, including Palantir, Era Technology, to develop its integrated supply chain management system. So for most, AI would be artificial intelligence, but I call it actionable intelligence. It's not always about human robots or self-driving cars, but hold that thought because we are coming on that one in just a second. But for me, AI means making the most sense of the data that already exists and taking the action based on past experiences. Which brings me to my next point. So there are many different companies like Palantir. You can Google and you will see a whole list. So why did US government or why do we love Palantir so much? For me, it's very simple. And everyone have their own reason. But for me, it's very straightforward. Anywhere deployment, right here, and that too in matter of hours. See, we all are consumers at heart. And I remember in one of the interviews of Jeff Bezos, and he said that one thing about consumers will never change. They will always want things cheaper and faster. That's exactly what Palantir has tapped into. I can't really talk about being cheaper, but from business sense, I can say that if something that is taking only a few hours to get implemented versus weeks and months, technically that should be more affordable. So in my opinion, the ability to adopt in healthcare, right here. In aviation, in logistics, that too in a matter of hours, anywhere in the world, is what makes this company unique and different than others. Now let's talk about one of the most interesting things about Palantir, something that made me pause for a few minutes and pushed me to think even more on the use cases for this company. So one of the slides mentioned about autonomous decision making. Now the term autonomous decision making can apply to any industry, and that's exactly what Palantir is showing here. From robotics right here, to manufacturing, to remote sensings, everywhere. It's all here, but here is something else as well, autonomous navigation. And let's read what they are talking about autonomous navigation. Right here is autonomous navigation, and if you expand this, this is what they give. For autonomous vehicles, algorithm deployed on vehicle sensor with Palantir Edge AI detect potential obstacles in the path of the moving vehicle and command the control system to avoid or mitigate collision. That kind of sounds to me as FSD. Again, I'm not saying they are coming out with FSD, but they are assisting in FSD. Now let's take a look at some of the news headlines and also on Palantir's Twitter feed. So recently an article came, Palantir News, Palantir Technology extend gains and hints at autonomous driving tech. And right after that, when the article came, few days within that time, they released this right here article that they will be participating in an auto expo that's taking place in India on July 21st. So what is Palantir doing in Auto Expo? Of course, we know that Palantir software has been used in cars, in insurance companies, or many other use cases. But I feel that because they have the capability of connecting data from different data sets, I think that Palantir can propose a huge value for the companies that are trying to break into that autonomous navigation or autonomous driving world. So I feel that there are always different ways of looking at things, and while I do believe that this company is going to excel in the AI game and will eventually take over many industries, but I'm also keeping my eyes open on how they're expanding and spending their resources. That's why I feel Q2 earnings will be amazing for us, because even though we are not out of pandemic and fears are coming back again, but the Q2 timeframe was the only timeframe when fear were low for pandemic, and the growth that Palantir had in Q2 will tell us how the short-term future should look for this company. And for those who have not watched my video yet, I did a video on Palantir Q2 surprise. I'm going to link that video over here. As always, thank you for joining me. Please click on the like button, consider subscribing so you don't miss future videos like this. Love you all. Until next time, you all have a sparkling day.